Hello, team. Thank y'all for joining us virtually. And in the room, we have Devin Haynes, our math coordinator, Tavia Johnson, also our math coordinator, Dr. Fanta Friday, our science coordinator, Ms. Wanda Smith, our special education representative, and Ms. Lori Rich with CTE, Mr. Joe Ortiz from Fair Meadows, and Ms. Rosie Sandoval. And then I know Claudia Salinas is helping us here today as well, both from BESL. So on the calendar invite for anyone who might need it, we do have both the links to the Google Hangouts and to the drive that has all of the documents. So we do have several documents we'll be referring to, and we appreciate everyone who's here with us today and supporting us in our work. So Manny, would you please display the agenda?
You'll have to bear with me.
And we just had Christy Mullins walk in the room. Thank you, Christy, for joining us. You're fine.
Yeah.
Bear with me.
Sure. Okay, Manny's laptop, he's having trouble. And Manny, I just lost the January 17 folder. Did you move it? That's weird. Okay, well, I'll just see how I can access it. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is to welcome everyone and thank you for being here. And follow that with a recap from last time's meeting. So we do have minutes that our Leslie Shimamura helped us with. So Manny, you have those in the file if you'll pull those up, please. They're the minutes, the IMOC minutes. Okay. If you'll take a moment to review those, that will give us our recap of the meeting. And that meeting served as our kickoff. That was the primary purpose of that meeting. There is one item that I would like to address, and it only came up because of a technical error that I created. If you notice the details of the minutes indicate that our meetings would be at 4 p.m. And so when I went in and created the start time for this meeting on our Outlook calendar, I put 4:30 p.m. So it's just kind of brought that conversation to the forefront then if we have a preference between 4 and 4:30. Just as we were about to start the meeting, I did receive a message up from the front desk and they were asking, will you have the back doors open and that sort of thing. So I think the 4 p.m. start time does benefit for a couple of reasons. While it does eat into a couple of our campus times, it gives us the opportunity to start earlier and end earlier. And then also our reception will still be open when people are arriving. So I think that may be more helpful. Does anyone have any other thoughts or input? You agree, Ms. Mullins? Okay, so we'll stick with 4 o'clock, and I apologize for the error that I made in scheduling this one. I just knew that I was condensing it to a 1 hour and made that mistake. So 4 p.m. will be our start time, standard start time for IMOC. Another reminder that comes from the minutes is that we will be meeting bi-weekly right now, just as we're getting our IMOC off to a start, getting more of our members knowing that they're on the committee and giving them the opportunity to be here. The more often we meet, the less there is to do. And then as we're running as a well-oiled machine, then hopefully we'll be meeting once a month, unless it's times like right now that we have an adoption. But does anyone have any input or feedback from the minutes? Okay, I do want to take a moment to thank the technology team that has allowed us to have the sessions recorded, gives the opportunity for people who could not be here to go back, gives us the opportunity to create the minutes even if we didn't do it live and in the moment. So we certainly appreciate everything that the team has done for us to make our virtual meetings a reality. Okay, Manny, if you'll pull the agenda back up, please. Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is our allotment report. And so if you will go into the drive, you will find that allotment report there. There's been no change. There was no activity between our previous meeting and this meeting. So you see the total of approximately $2 million has remained the same. Any questions on this item? Okay, we will move on. The next item on the agenda is Proclamation 2019. And I do want to thank Claudia Salinas, who has stepped away. She'll be back in just a few minutes. And then Ashley Logan, who is joining us virtually. And you heard from her at our last meeting. She gave us some insight to the work the Proclamation 2019 core adoption team has been doing. And then we have Christy Mullins in the room, who also is a member of that team and has worked with us. And so the Proclamation 2019, I would like to give you a summary of the work that has been done to now, the work that the core adoption team has done. And so there are some documents in the file that I'm going to refer to during this portion of the meeting. So feel free to look at both of those. That is both the Proclamation 2019 work summary and the core adoption team PDF. So let me start with the presentation then, Manny. Ready? Okay. So the core adoption team really, truly came to life in a very organic manner. As you might imagine, having come in September, there was a lot that needed to be done quickly in order to get us up to speed and to stay on track in order to have our selection go to our school board in March. And so we look at the spring, the earlier the better, and I'm going to address another issue there as far as the timeline. I'll talk with you more about that, but the goal was and has been to get this item before the board so that they approve it, and then we have the publishers that we know we need to contact for the actually ordering and the books to come in and get training happening and all those things. So there's a lot that happens prior to that. So I started working really, really fast, got the support of our ELAR social studies coordinators, as this is an ELAR adoption, and then realized we also needed the input of our BESL team and our special education. So we've had a core team that has been working diligently, and the purpose of that team is to operate as a steering committee in preparation for the work that would be presented to you, the Instructional Materials Oversight Committee, and conducted by the Proclamation 2019 subcommittee, which is our textbook adoption, as we know it as a textbook adoption committee. So that team has been working. And from that work, we identified considerations and constraints that we would take into consideration as a district as non-negotiables. What are the things we have to have in this ELAR adoption? And so we determined we have to have a basal. That terminology, some of you may know, that's our actual teacher's edition, a book in our students' hands, a book in our teachers' hands. There's a huge move, and has been for a few years now, toward technology. There are many districts across the state that are one-on-one. And so as we're making those transitions, we hear all kinds of stories, especially when you're out in the instructional materials world, of, our district intended to move to one-on-one by so many years from now. So we went all digital, and oops, that didn't happen. So now our students don't have the books or the materials that they need. And so things happen in a lot of different ways. And so our thinking with where we are in our district, with where we are with technology, with where we are with our teachers that are coming in new, it would be beneficial for the resource that they have in their hands to have a basal. That way they could give our students the best possible quality instruction.
And from technology standpoint, since we've gotten back from break, we've received a little over 400 Chromebooks.
Oh, good.
Yes, and that's going to Hastings, Acton, DHS, SPED. So we've gotten a lot of Chromebooks in.
Okay, awesome. So the next thought we had is that, actually this developed over time. It's a thought that we had from the beginning, but we were able to put the words together to express that it's important to us that we have a product that has a high alignment to the TEKS, that the product contains a well-defined, user-friendly framework that is supportive of teacher lesson planning and implementation of standards-based instruction. So we don't want that framework hidden. We don't want teachers to have to search, oh yes, it's TEKS-based, but it would take a lot of work to even discover that. We want for our framework to be obvious in this product that our teachers are using. And then we find it very important that our product align with our balanced literacy program. So that's a framework that we have in place. Would you like to speak to that, Ms. Mullins? Just kind of give us a concise explanation of what the balanced literacy program is.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry, I'm a little on the spot. So our balanced literacy program, as I think all of you are very familiar with, is just the integration of our literary elements, reading and writing, to be taught as parallel processes instead of individualized subjects, one being taught at one time, another being taught at another, but that those are going to be going hand in hand together. The great news is that with the changing of our TEKS this coming school year, those processes have been put together in kind of a really nice way that the state has said, we see the need for these processes to be intertwined, and as a result, we have created a series of standards that are going to lead you down that path. So I think the balanced literacy approach to ELAR and SLAR instruction is absolutely going to be super easy to get. And as we've looked through the new textbooks and the different options that vendors and publishers have provided, we're seeing that balanced literacy approach kind of in all the things that the state is putting out. So that's nice.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Mullins. I
Yes.
appreciate that. So another consideration that was made that as it relates to the components of this adoption that are handwriting. So there are different schools of thought. There's pedagogically, there's block, and there's slant. And so those are also considered horizontal or vertical. And so slant kind of leads us more toward preparing our students to write in cursive. And that's the philosophy that we have in our district, that we would recommend that our material have that framework in it. And so that is the direction we're going there. And that's what we've included here. And so another very key point is that there is a preference that we have a standalone resource for our handwriting, for our spelling, potentially, but many of the publishers have integrated spelling and handwriting into their basal. And so if necessary, we understand that there are budgetary constraints and things of that nature, but we feel like the work of this team and this subcommittee that exists is to bring forth what would be the best selection. So that's a consideration that's been made. Another consideration we made is the way that our campuses are set up. So, you know, a lot of times when adoptions are held, the questions come up, well, does it have to be the same publisher, K-8? Are we willing to consider different publishers for ELAR and SLAR? And so what we have discussed and the constraint that we see that we could make happen is a breakdown of K-4 that would match our elementary schools, 5-6 to match our intermediate, and 7-8 to match our middle schools. What we would not include is that it would cross at one campus, to where 5th grade would have one publisher and 6th grade would have a different publisher. We felt it's important to have the same publisher on one campus. So that's the breakdown that we've considered here. And so as you might imagine, once you put these constraints in place, there are some publishers that then are, to say in some ways, eliminated because they may have K-4, but not 4-8 or things of that nature. Is that what you're gonna ask, Ms. Johnson?
Yes,
Please feel
we
free.
have that issue in math. Oh, no.
Go
We
ahead.
have that issue in math.
And do we
The
have,
option that we utilize is currently just K-5, and then we have to use a different one for 6 and up.
and how does that work? Does that work out well, or has that created something of a problem or an issue?
Because they had already had the adoption prior to me getting here, it's been working out fine so far.
Okay.
And we just have training for the adoption for K-5 and training for the adoptions for 6 and up.
Okay. Okay. Well, we appreciate the input because we certainly have considered that. Another thing I think it's important to share, especially with the next item, as I'm having these conversations, not only with the core adoption team, but with leadership as well, is the consideration of what's best for the students. That's really what ultimately is the most important thing. So if we find something that we say, we just couldn't, there's no way we can have the same one for 5th and 6th. We've got to, and we receive that feedback. We're open to that, but these constraints will help in the decision-making process. So thank you for that. That helps. So the next consideration, for example, is the streamline of ELAR and SLAR. So we considered having 2 different publishers and 2 different basals in the student's hands. Ultimately, we've put here in the constraints that we do prefer streamlining of those, that it be the same. And this was the considerations. One is teacher collaborative planning. So now we're sitting together, we're planning together, and you've got one book and I've got another. I've got one published, you've got another. So we thought streamlining that will help. Also, we have our dual language program that beginning at 2nd grade is 50-50. So our teachers are teaching aligned both languages. Yeah. And then also the consideration of creating continuity for our students. We have students who sometimes have a denial of services or come into the program maybe a little bit later. And so now they were with one teacher, they have one product, now they have a different one. So this could all go both ways. In having the conversation, the thoughts also came up, yes, but on the other hand, now the teacher has more materials and more resources and more to choose from. So we could certainly go both ways on this, and we're just having to make a call, and this is the call we made. But I'm open to your feedback and open to that if we found an item that we just get the feedback that it really needs to be a different way and let's do it differently. We're open to that. We just thought it was better to start with these consistent, clear considerations and constraints. Okay, any feedback on any of that? Okay, awesome. All right, Manny, we'll go to the next slide. And this actually is going to lead us more to the documents that I've uploaded. So I'm going to fill you in on the work of the core adoption team and our next steps. And there are a couple areas where I would like and need your input. So let's start by looking at the Proclamation 2019 work summary. I've already told you the purpose and the manner in which the core adoption team operates, the considerations and constraints that have been made. And I'm going to now jump to the other document, Manny, please, which is the core adoption team. This one actually gives more of the summary of the work of the core adoption team. So we want you to be aware of the times we've met, the work we've done. Again, I'll repeat, the members of this committee, or pardon me, this team are Christy Mullins and Ashley Logan, Claudia Galvan, who just came in the room, and we've had Miss Fallon Hawthorne joining us, and Miss Wanda Smith has been in her stead when she's not been able to join us. So thank you to everyone who's worked. This team has worked tirelessly many hours and supported us with their input, expertise, and feedback. So starting on October 7th, this was, I individually went to Region 10 and I attended an instructional materials publisher showcase. That was my first opportunity to connect with some of our representatives. I connected with Houghton Mifflin, Harcourt, McGraw-Hill, Pearson at that time. We scheduled for them to start having materials delivered to us. And then I came back and met with a couple of members from our ELAR team on prior to that, actually, I did a presentation in SLT, giving that team awareness and the needs that we have for their continued support and next steps. And then on October 29th, actually, was when we came together and began reviewing the materials. And that was our first glance of those materials on the state adopted list. Then on November 5th, we began the conversations about a needs assessment and reviewing what that needs assessment would look like, send that out to our staff our ELAR teachers, SLR teachers, to get their input on the needs and that they would want the product to have to meet in this adoption. And then also to begin creating our Proclamation 2019 subcommittee membership, which that committee is a subcommittee of this Instructional Materials Oversight Committee. We also talked about going to Kilgore for a session held by Texas ASCD that was going to be scheduled for November 30th. And we started to organize our plans for that trip. And then on November 11th to 14th, I attended the Instructional Materials Coordinators Association of Texas Conference. Mari Zamora attended that with me as well. That gave us the opportunity to deepen our learning of the systems and processes for textbook adoption and also interact with vendors, review materials, and attend information sessions. So all of this dialogue and networking has been very helpful in keeping us grounded and creating a tight timeline that we could stick to. Then on November 30th, the core adoption team attended the Texas ASCD session that was empowering leaders to align and adopt resources. This was a one-day institute. It gave us the opportunity to learn more from a pedagogical standpoint, an instructional standpoint. What are the things we should be looking for? What are the structures and systems that are in place that our selection of a material is not only about putting something in a student's hand, but making sure it correlates back to our standards and making sure we have connections within the decisions that are being made. And it was a really, really great event. We learned a lot. It gave us an opportunity as a core team to have more conversation and dialogue and bring those thoughts back with us in our continued pursuit of this project. On December 7th, Ashley Logan went for a portion of the day to Region 11, and they also were hosting an instructional materials publisher extravaganza. And so she had a similar opportunity to view some presentations and make some connections there as well. Then on December 11th, we came actually in this room and we put the nuts and bolts to it, created a Proclamation 2019 subcommittee membership list of about 65 people. On that list, there's about 35 teachers, and then 30 are our administrators, our teacher specialists, and select of those folks, principals and parents. And so that's the work that we did on that day. Then on December 18th, we started working on a rubric. We are working with Learning List. I mentioned that, I believe, in our previous meeting of IMOC. And so Learning List has a representative. Her name's Tasha Barker, and she is a guiding force for us. She supports us and provides us with tools. And so one of the tools she provided us with is a rubric. And so by then we had the results of the needs assessment survey, and we used the input of the results of that needs assessment survey to inform our rubric. So then we spent quite a while working on our rubric. And as I wrap this up in just a few minutes, I'd like to give the members of the team who are here with us, Ms. Mullins and Ms. Galvan, an opportunity just to give you some insight what the work has been like from their perspective. And then on, let's see, December 18th, we were still working on the rubric. We got it all almost finalized. We did that when we got back on January 10th. Another thing we did is we revisited our considerations and constraints, because we had kind of been putting those together along the way, but we thought it was a good time to make those a little bit more formal. So we formalized those. And then we met again this week on January 16th to discuss those considerations and constraints one more time, and also some additional considerations for strengthening our selection process. So as you've heard me describe, we've done quite a bit of work. At the same time, we wanted to be sure that we weren't rushing through any pieces and that we are giving voice to our staff, to our community. And so I'll talk you more through those pieces in just a moment. But up to that point, Christy and Claudia, would y'all chime in?
I think we've just had a great opportunity to collaborate together and see what all needs we have with balanced literacy, bilingual ESL, and SPED, and just having the opportunity to get together and talk and look through the resources. And I think that's been very beneficial, just sharing our thoughts.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that, because just yesterday we got to really kind of dive in, and we've done so much of the legwork part of all of it, that actually getting the textbooks and things like that in our hands really just happened yesterday, where we could sit down as a team. We may have looked at them separately, but so it was really interesting to kind of talk back and forth and go, do you see anything on here for ELLs? Do you see anything for differentiation? You know, that kind of thing were really good conversations between Wanda and Claudia and Dr. Martinez and myself and Ashley. We just had a really nice time able to kind of sit down and talk. But we also learned during that session that it's going to be an extensive process. We laughed that it took us an hour, and I had only looked really at kindergarten and maybe first, and then
I was looking at second grade. I mean,
Yeah.
it took us a while to go through the actual rubric and look at the resource, but like you said, we were only able to look at one grade level
Right.
at a time. So definitely
Okay.
going back and trying to review every grade level and completing those rubrics.
And it kind of gives us an idea that when it comes down to all of the extra members coming in and doing some of these reviews, like it gives us an idea of what that process is going to be like. And maybe we can make it a little less painstakingly long if we come up with some
Yeah.
shortcuts.
Awesome. Okay, so then that leads us to our next steps. This is where I feel like a map. When you are here, this is where we are. Thank you for being here, IMOC. We appreciate you. And so we will, as a core adoption team, continue to have access to the materials, and we'll take a look again. We've got a couple dates scheduled on the 24th and 25th to look at those again of this month. Our big day, our next critical date is January 29th. And this is the date that I am doing my best to get communications out to our Proclamation 2019 subcommittee. I've come up with a couple of new ideas of ways to reach out to folks individually, just like some of you, being transparent. You didn't even know you're on IMOC. You're like, what is this? It just showed up on my calendar. So just working on strengthening those communications and making sure we're streamlining information. So I'm sure, have some folks out there of those 65 people who are still going, I don't know, I heard something, there's books in room 645, but I don't know. So we're working on that. And our goal is to have, on January 29th, the location is to be determined, but we're going to have our proclamation subcommittee all together. In addition to the members of our proclamation subcommittee, we're asking all of our teacher specialists to attend that as well, because there's work we would like for them to do. We're asking that they turn around what they learn on the 29th, because we're going to have a window on January 30th through February 7th. So to bring y'all up to speed, we have 3 publishers that have delivered materials to all of our elementary, intermediate, and middle schools, and those are on display. There might be a little glitch here or there that we're working through right now, but primarily speaking, books are out there. There are a few more publishers that we're going to request materials from, our handwriting, our spelling folks, and then also a few more of our secondary, like an example would be 7th and 8th grade would be EMC, College Board, that their product is Springboard. So we're going to have a few more out there for them to review, but the window, so they've already got an informal opportunity to peruse and see what's out there, but giving them some guidance, giving them some facilitation from the teacher specialist, that more formal window is going to be January 30th through 7th of February, that we're asking them to peruse materials and actually review them. At that time, we're going to create a document, and all of this is going to be explained at the January 29th meeting, that we're going to provide them with a document to take back to their campuses that's going to give them the opportunity to provide us with a top 2 selection with evidence. And we have the learning list tool, and we have some guidance that we'll give them for that. When they give those to us at the central office level, we're going to compile all of those, and then we're going to select the top 2 publishers that will be giving us presentations. Now, one of the areas that we have a little bit of a hang up right now, and I'm going to need your input as a committee, is the date of those presentations. I'll get back to that here in just a minute, but the presentations are a very critical piece. In our original plan, we had that on 2 separate nights. We've narrowed that down to 1. We're hoping we can get all those presentations in one evening. I think we've said from about 5 to 8:30. And after those presentations, now let me speak more to the presentations. So the presentations, whatever date we select, they're going to be based off of the information we receive from the campuses. On that same day, we're going to have a public display of materials. So we're looking at Reed Middle School. I'm going to be checking the calendar and facilities to see if we can host this at Reed Middle School. And maybe starting at about 10 a.m., we'll have the materials on display so that the public can come in, anyone who'd like to. It's going to be a public viewing of materials. And then that evening, the presentations will be hosted all at one location. Okay. We're going to interface with communications to publicize that. And then our target date is that on February 19th, we have our final debrief and decision. So the members of the subcommittee would then come. They've had the opportunity to review materials at their campus. They've gotten feedback from the teachers on their team. They're have seen the presentations. Anyone who wanted in the public to view those will have done so. And then the subcommittee will have a discussion, review the material, from gathering information from their review of materials, from learning list, from the rubric, from the presentations. And then as an individual, those individuals are going to synthesize all of that data and cast a vote. And then the leadership team is going to use that feedback to make a decision. I think it's really important to be very transparent from the front that while we look at the materials and give our feedback of the materials, we also have financial constraints to take into consideration. So just know that the leadership, the conversations will be held based on the feedback from the staff, and then the reality that we see as it relates to ordering materials and being able to get those in our district. So on that note of cost, to bring y'all up to speed, the publishers are required by, I believe it's the 25th of January, to submit their cost and their pricing. So right now there's no public pricing. There are different packages created, and consider also that that's a big part of the structure right now, knowing that a district can buy as little or as much as they want based on their own fiduciary abilities. So we, for example, one of the publishers has a bronze, a gold, a silver, a gold, and a platinum. And so it's our decision, or which components of that we purchase. So that's part of the conversation too, is that we may say, well, we could get this version with this publisher, but then we could get this version with this publisher, and here's the cost differentiation and things of that nature. So after the 25th, the publishers are expecting more or less what they've told me is to have prices to us by the end of January. So that will help us as well as we're making decisions. Any questions up to that point? No? Okay. I just want to come back to the document we were at before, Manny, which is the I can find it here. The one that says work in it.
Work summary?
Yes, please. The work summary. Okay. When we look at the work summary, I've already gone over some of what's in the next steps in our draft document. The other piece of the conversation I want you to be aware of is we had a conversation about compensating our teachers who are on the subcommittee. And so of our entire committee, there's about 35 teachers on the subcommittee. The compensation would be $125 per teacher. Our goal is to work through all of the logistics we need to internally to be able to do that. And we've identified the funding for that. And that will help because as you note from the different times that I mentioned, the teams are coming together for several hours in order to do that after school. So that's our goal there. So our next steps are to determine the date for our publisher presentations. And then once we've, we feel like we've done a really good job fleshing out a selection timeline. Our next goal is to take the timelines we have for adoption, purchasing, and implementation and really flesh those out. Some of you might be aware from the last board meeting that we just had, the timeline was given for our overall district budget. So those conversations are happening now, and we need to be prepared to be a part of that conversation. So let's take a step for just a moment. Before I do, are there any questions or comments or thoughts? Anyone from our virtual viewers? Okay. Or participants? Okay, So our date to be determined. Let's talk about our Proclamation 2019 subcommittee coming together, along with our open invitation to all staff, community, and public. So I'll take y'all back. Originally, we were looking at February 5th and 7th, but at that time, we did not have integrated the teacher component for the campuses to give us a top 2 selection. So when we brought that component in, we really need to give our teams a little more time after the 29th. So if we have the publisher presentations on the 5th, and we have the first training on the 29th, that means teachers have the 30th, 31st, 1st, and 4th. That would be only 4 days to review the materials. And as you just heard the team talk about, it's just not enough time. If we have them on the 7th, it gives them a day more, but we also have our district-wide PD on the 8th, and a lot of our folks are going to be focused in on that. That brings us then to the 11th and 12th. What I've been trying to do is look at Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are typically better meeting dates. Wednesdays, sometimes family night or parents or have other things going on. So didn't look at Wednesdays too much. Tried to stay away from Mondays and Fridays because it's beginning and end of the week. If we look at the week of the 12th, we have our science fair on the 12th. We have Valentine's Day on the 14th. So we'll recognize that as a national holiday. Then, of course, on the 18th, we're not here. We have President's Day. Oh, is that like a PD day? I wasn't real sure, but it's an off day. Okay, so we're not here on the 18th. And so then there's another timeline to consider. And this timeline usually stays in the background, but it's a very important one for our work. And that's the deadlines that we have in place in order to present in March at the board meeting. So I was looking at last time's minutes, and we'd actually were targeting April. But when it comes to ordering, we really want to be able to order the sooner the better, to give ourselves the time for the materials to come in, to get PD done over the summer. If we're still in the hangovers of the selection, we're not going to be able to move as quickly as we need to. So March is the goal. And with March being the goal, what's missing where we need to plug in is a presentation date. So I did have a conversation via text with Dr. Friday prior to this, and our thinking is that if parents are out the night before, folks are out the night before, that could influence turnout to the science fair. It's 2 very big events that we would be inviting our parents to. So looking at those dates in hopes that we could find a good date that could work. And I wanted to bring it to the committee. So any thoughts? I'll give y'all a minute to kind of look at it and see what recommendations y'all might have. I think my first question is, am I right about Wednesday? Is that a day we need to stay away from in our community? Y'all probably know better than I do. Devin's saying yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So we want to stay away from Wednesday.
It's the district science fair, so it includes all schools. Is it just at the high school? So all of the campuses are bringing their projects to the high school. So I thought we normally do.
Yeah.
That means
And let me fill y'all in on one other detail, because I looked at this when we talked in the team yesterday. The core adoption team spoke on this issue, and I was thinking that I could move some of the dates where I'm submitting information, like submitting to our chief academic officer, here's our decision and here's our board presentation, and this goes off to it leaves curriculum and instruction, and it must be in the superintendent's office by the 27th. That's Wednesday, the 27th. If we were to do the presentations on the 19th, bring the committee back again on the 21st for the decision, the concern I have is we've got to also ask our publishers for proposals and costs, because we can't go to the board and say, oh, we want blah, blah, blah product. And then when they say, oh, what's the cost? We go, oh, we don't know yet. We're not there yet. We've got to have.
choose, or we can't ask from all of them just as?
We could,
preliminary?
we could. I don't know that we would go all the way step of requesting the proposal, but we could have them. And that's what I've done with the presentations. Like I originally had them lined up the 5th to the 7th and then told them, if you're not selected, you won't be presenting. Well, thank you for all you've done for us in your time, but you won't be presenting. And they were fine with that. They understand. And we could do something similar. And I appreciate that recommendation because we really need a solution here. And when you look at the dates, I mean, if we looked at every single date, what I do like about pushing it further is it gives the teachers more time for review. Because if I told the publishers, we would like y'all here on the 19th, just like I did for the 5th and 7th, I can ask the staff to turn in their top 2 requests by like the 14th or the 13th. And that gives them a few more days.
Well, we have a competition going, so we're expecting to have several.
Any feedback from our
students there
first?
in the past.
Some of them? Okay.
The parents, so it's like a family.
How what time
Yeah,
is it?
they all
Yeah.
come. You usually have several hundred.
Yeah.
I'm getting to that, like, whenever we do stuff at the high school for dual credit, sometimes we don't have the turnout we would like to have. And if we could set it up to where they could review those books that same night.
As a science fair?
See, I don't know, I've never attended the science fair, so I don't know how it runs. That's why I was like, you're like, what's going on?
So it's pretty, we're making it pretty big. We have several vendors, that come and they set up and they do activities with the parents and students. So like the Dallas Zoo will be there, the Flow Museum will be there, Arboretum will be there. So we have, I think right now, about 8 to 10 vendors that will be set up too. So that will kind of maybe take away from what you really want them to do.
Yeah.
Great.
What are y'all's thoughts if we do put it on the 19th, the fact that we weren't in school the day before? Because of course that was another reason, we're kind of trying to away from certain dates, but no matter what, I already had our decision meeting there at some point anyway. So I was still needing folks to come on that that Tuesday, the 19th. Any thoughts on that? I mean, I know we could publicize and over publicize and do that. Our internal staff will be aware, and I don't know how our staff does. For that particular evening, the presentations would be more like 5 to 8:30. So the books would have been on display since the morning, since around 10 a.m. And then read, possibly, yeah, if I can get those approvals.
Tuesday after,
Okay. Okay.
if we advertise.
Mm-hmm. The other thought I have, and I'd like your input, is doing them a Tuesday and Thursday, which I was going to do the presentations that way anyway. But if I'm asking 65 people to come on a Tuesday and come back again on a Thursday, I like that because it's fresh on their minds. They just had the review 2 days ago. Now they're coming to vote. So that's fresh on their minds. I like that part of it. But the asking people to come 2 nights in 1 week, I can't, if we do it on the 19th, I can't get away from that. I need them to come back.
You need them the second time.
The second time, let me look and see if I put a time frame on there. I put 4:45 to 6:30. That's what I put.
So with the voting that you were talking about, they can't do it on the same day?
No, because we're going to have a discussion. Yeah. But the time frame is 4:45 to 6:30, which could run shorter depending, but we've got to also consider people may come in with very divergent opinions. We don't know. We're hopeful that everyone will be like, yes, this is great. Whatever you want. But we can't assure that.
And when you say, you talking about those teachers that are listed?
I'm thinking
about assessment, so I rather think about assessment schedule, because that's running into benchmarks. I think, when into benchmark time?
Yes, ma'am. It's the list at the end of the blue sheet. Could you go to that, Manny? You do have access to that list on the one that says selection timeline draft. It's Proclamation
Look at
2019.
back.
Oh, that's okay. So they're primarily ELAR teachers. And then again, like we said, our teacher specialists. And at the end, Manny. Right there. Keep going. It's the list.
Oh, the list is-
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Will dinner be provided or
Yes. Not on the presentation night,
but on the second?
but the second night, yes. Is that option better than a Wednesday? I don't know.
Well, when, if you're talking about getting teachers after school on Wednesday, I do know most of them have their staff meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just saying, I'm wondering about the time being pushed up.
The way we started at 4:30, the 4:45 start, is that what you're talking about? Making it earlier? Do you think people could get away? That's the only thing.
But we were talking about, are you talking about at Reed?
That one doesn't have to be at Reed.
Oh.
That's going to be subcommittee only. So we just need a space that holds about 65 people comfortably.
And you meet them all at the same time?
For that meeting, yes, ma'am. Aren't you glad you came to IMOC today?
And you want, what's your deadline again? So you want to do this on the 21st?
Our goal is that the decision be made by the 19th. And the absolute latest I think we can push it is the 21st. Documents are due into the SOUP's office the 27th. And I typically submit more like that Monday or Tuesday to give the chief academic officer an opportunity to review prior to submission.
The same people are meeting on the 19th and the 21st.
Yes, ma'am. And they're very different activities. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you have funds to pay for a sub or half of that?
We would have done things a lot differently if we were pulling teachers off of the campus. That's been one of our constraints. So, what were we going to say, Dr. Friday?
What was the drawback again for doing the presentations on the 7th? You say you need
The drawback there is that the teachers we're going to have a training on the 29th that our teacher specialists are coming to, and that'll be their first opportunity to be in a whole group setting at the district level. Now, the teachers have materials and have had most of the materials for a while. We're going to get some more materials out there, but it's not as intense, I don't think, as the ones they currently have. But if we were looking at it just plainly to say, when were they trained? When was the information due? Then it really only gives them the 30th, 31st, 1st, 4th. Now, in that case, it gives them the 5th and the 6th. Oh, the drawback on the 7th is we have district-wide PD the next day. Our game on. Right, but on that, some of us are going to be involved, and we're preparing, and it's on the 7th, we got to prepare going into the 8th. That's the drawback there, Dr. Friday. But let's look at this end of it. I'm trying to think, what are our thoughts if I sent a communication out to the teacher specialists prior to the 29th? Today is not even the 20th yet. And give them some guidance. And Christine, Claudia, I'll tell y'all what I was thinking. And I haven't looked at it carefully, but I'm thinking of taking the 10 components from the rubric. They can have the rubric as a guide if they'd like to use it, and ask them to rate like a 1 to 5 for each component of the rubric, and then come up with an overall rating. And so I could send all that information effective now, get the last few publishers to send their items out. The publishers are quick. They've been very responsive. Get those items out ASAP. Then technically they come to the 29th, they get a little bit of a boost. They can go back, they can give a little more information, something maybe they weren't clear about, they gain more clarity on. And then it's due, I'd say by the 1st, because in that case we would do them on the 5th is what I'm thinking. So 29, they would have 30, 31, 1. I mean, I could push it to the 4th and just call those publishers the day before, but that's really tight because we would do it on the 5th in that case. That's okay. No, you're fine. You're fine. Okay, you're good. No worries. Any thoughts on that? On putting it out? If they had it from now, then the information they get on the 29th, it's almost more like if you were wondering about something, if you needed some more clarity, here's the information, go back, clear all that up. It's just really rough.
So the adoptions that are currently on the campuses now, what are they doing with those?
They're just on display.
They're just on display.
Yeah, they're just on display.
I've seen them on display, but I've seen some teacher specialists leave the meetings as far as walking them through what's there.
Okay.
So I didn't know if it was going to be something different than what you're trying to talk to them about. On the 29th.
It's we haven't given them that guidance to do so. They just did it because they did it.
Okay.
So that's great, but now we've needed a manner to a formal forum. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Is that something you can do with what we're doing now? Virtual? Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Something you can do virtually to kind of help push the date.
Yeah. We could do that. Because I could get the lady from Learning List who's helping us, who's going to be here on the 29th, get her to do it with them virtually sooner rather than later. And then what we want to do is, while we want to support guiding the process so that we are moving more in a flow together within our system. And I do like that idea. I think that's a good idea. Because we could do that during the day. We could do a virtual during the day, because it would primarily be our teacher specialists. So if we did that effective, let's see, I could just get with our representative, Tasha. If we did that as early as next week, I don't think it's going to be any much sooner, really. I mean, the 29th is already on next Tuesday, because to organize and expect them to be on, I mean, we could do the 23rd, maybe. But, I've got to give them time to know they're expected to join this meeting and everything. And that I could do. Because, it's just like pulling anybody unexpectedly. You want to give them time. So it's already kind of tight. I don't know that we could pull it off that quick. I don't know if we could pull it off any quicker. The 24th or 25th. So we're on Thursday now. So give them a full week to plan. Do it like on that. And just give them a jump start. Okay.
Do it first thing in the morning before they day start. But that's a GOB day.
A what day?
GOB. That's a geography day.
Oh, see there. Yeah. Things like that, y'all. I mean, things have been planned out for a while. So I'm going to say I don't think we can do it any sooner for those reasons. So And thank you for saying it's a GOB day, because I would have missed that. So let's leave that on the 29th, everyone.
Or the Friday in the morning.
Well, all that really does, though, is give them another, I mean, they're not going to turn it around by that afternoon. And then it gives them one day on Monday. That's, I don't think we'll get the benefit we're looking for from doing it that way. Christy, we ruled that out because the 24th is the geography bee. And so if we try to pull something in sooner, I don't think it'll work. So I think we have to keep our,
No, okay.
oh, okay. And the time's 5:31. If anyone has to excuse yourself, I understand. And we have a video recording of this that'll help you to pick up what you need. So it's okay. So if we, let's see, I'm looking at the date here. 19th. I need the decisions made by the 19th. I think what we may do, Tavia, is go with the recommendation you made of getting the like some pre-proposals from our vendors, and do it. We'll just have to do it back to back, the 19th and 21st. 2 meetings on 1 week. I don't really see another option with the days that are available. Yeah.
This state of house, like I can present this to my team, we need to be able to figure out the, and have the money, and then we vote, you just submit to all of that. And then you submit, and then you submit to the, superintendent.
Okay.
Yeah, have a great.
All right. Thank you, Tavia. We appreciate you being here. All right. Thank you. No, we're going to keep going because I have more items on the agenda. So go back to the, that's fine. That's fine. We'll wrap it up. At least we'll be formally wrapped up. Yeah, back to the agenda. Okay. Claudia, we're wrapping up. I'm going to go back to the agenda. So to summarize that item, we're going to meet on the 19th and 21st. Our presentations will be on the 19th. Then we'll have a subcommittee meeting on the 21st. We'll ask our vendors for some preliminary proposals. And then we'll hope that our staff can handle coming back to back. That gives our teams plenty of time to review the materials. We'll make that deadline the 13th of when they have to give their top 2 to CNI office. And
Which 13th?
February 13th. Yes, thank you. And we're going to, that'll give me 3 business days to communicate with the vendors who, well, no, actually gives me 2 business days to communicate with the vendors who are going to be here on the 19th. Old business, we don't really have too much. Proclamation 2019 is a standing item for us. New business, campus updates and requests. I have received a couple. One of them is pending. I need to get back with the Collegiate Academy. It's been a while that they submitted a request, just letting me know that they had some materials and want to know how those need to be inventoried. I also recently received a request this week from Hastings for some math. I believe it's 3rd grade. And then I also received a request regarding Braille items for 1 student. And so what I did is I reached out to just our special ed director to let her know that I'm aware of that, and we'll be working on that. So we've got those are the only requests that I'm aware of at this time. And then our next meeting is Thursday, January the 31st. Okay, so any other questions, thoughts, comments? Lori?
So will this include dual credit books for the high school classes?
So here's a thought. Let me give you some thoughts. Our instructional material allotment has not been used in the past, is my understanding, for dual credit books. Ms. Payne brought that up in a meeting we were in earlier today. She asked about it. What we do as an instructional materials oversight committee, when our allotment doesn't meet our need, we have to look at our whole district and different funding sources. But the only funding source we have input in directly is the IMA. So traditionally, that's not where the funds came from, but we need to be aware that it's a need. So please communicate with me about it, and then we'll go the direction we need to go in order to meet that need, whether it's IMA or some other fund. Okay, but when it does come to the actual purchase, distribution, and inventorying, you know, I'm new to this role, and so I need to open up some communication about that. Okay, so we'll do that, Lori.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay, all right, well, thank you so much to everyone who's joined us, and thank you, Manny. I appreciate you helping us today.